sense of soul. It's time to awaken. Today with us on Sense of Soul, we have Dr. Sharnael Wolverton Sehon. She is a naturopathic doctor, a quantum scientist, a linguist, and theologian. She's also an accomplished educator, author, and entrepreneur. A few of her recent creations are the book, The Science of Miracles, Remembering the Frequency of Love, and the card deck called Crystals, Oils, and Degrees. And she has produced numerous teachings and topics of divine science and the human body, including consciousness, epigenetics, quantum health, frequency, the biofield, and way more. She has an awesome YouTube channel called Dr. Sharnael's True TV, and she's here to share all of these wonderful things with us. So please welcome Dr. Sharnael. Hi,
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Very well. Thank you so much for this time together.
Well, I'm excited because you know what? I think that oftentimes for myself, and I've seen in other people, we forget that we're multidimensional. And when we get into the spiritual stuff, it's so fun that we forget about the physical body
Yes.
until it
Yes.
knocks us on our ass. And then we're like, oh,
Yes. Well, it's all connected. Everything is very connected. So when
yeah.
we see that things aren't going on physical, that'll affect the spiritual and vice versa. When we start getting really clean in our diet, then we start having the better spiritual connections and hearing God better and or source, whatever you call it. So yeah, there's no separation.
Yeah. And you know, when I think about it, it was really the physical body that led me to my spiritual journey in the first place.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia, years ago. And of course, it was just stress that was screaming.
I
Uh,
had the same thing, 6 or 7 years, and that's what got me back to myself. That's
okay.
so interesting that you had the same situation, but we would find each other. Oh, that's so cool.
Actually, at the time, my best friend and I both were diagnosed with fibromyalgia. We had the same symptoms and we were chasing after them. And sometimes when I would look up, of course, we didn't even have like a lot of internet back then, but when I would look up my symptoms, I kept running into like awakening symptoms.
Really?
Yeah. And I was like, what the hell's an awakening? I mean, I grew up Catholic my whole life. I was like, it was not even in my vocabulary. When I look back, I'm like, yeah, my body was screaming. I wanted to be known, it wanted to heal.
I
Yeah.
had never thought of it as my body leading me there. I like the way you said that. That's really interesting. I'm gonna have to, that's really interesting.
Yeah. And then, of course, like I said, I got so into the spiritual stuff. I was like, ooh, this is a vacation. I was a mom of 4 kids, so I definitely I was like, I'm gonna go into my closet for half an hour, guys. I'll be back.
That's awesome. Yes. We gotta
Yeah.
have that me time, especially as moms.
Yeah. Now I have like free time because most of my kids are, well, 3 of them are adults and I have a 12-year-old. So it's like for the first time in my life, I have something for myself and that doesn't revolve around them. And
We are so much alike. So
yeah.
yeah, I have three of mine, and then we have two because I'm back with my love, my first love, and he had two from his. So all of them are out of the house now, except for our youngest two, but they're in different homes. So like sometimes we have them and sometimes we don't. And it's just like, how do we be parents? Like it's so weird just to not have anything to do with them, you know?
Yeah. Well, Dr. Charnel, let me just tell you. So we have 5 kids between my
You
partner
have
and
five kids too?
yeah. And my last one is like our love child because he is my first love. He was my first kiss. And
What?
yeah, isn't that random? I have goosebumps.
Okay, so you got back with your
Yeah.
like how long was your recess?
Gosh, a long time. I mean, we've been together now like 15, 17 years, something like that. Let's see, 17 years. I was with my first 3 children's father for 15 years. So yeah.
Okay.
Whoa.
So mine, I was with my high school sweetheart and college sweetheart. We were engaged and set to be married. And then things just got weird on my end of like, I just started freaking out because I never had anyone to compare him to. Like, I didn't know, like, well, what if this isn't it? Like, I think it is, but what if it isn't? And having all this like stress about it. So we took a recess, and then it ended up kind of being a 25-year recess. So I tried to
Wow.
find him when we broke up, but we didn't have social media. So it was like I couldn't, unless you wrote a letter and knew where to find him, or, there was no landline.
Mhm.
So I just didn't know how to reach him. And it took years to figure it out. But in the meantime, I moved to a city where I thought that he was going to be. And I saw him for like really briefly for a minute. And then he was with a girl, and that was weird. And then we left. And then I ended up marrying the dad of my kids. And 2 weeks later, that girl came back to me at my work. And because when we met up, she was just like really weird. And I hadn't seen him in years. And I was like, oh my God, Brian, like, hey. And she's just standing there, like looking at me like, what are you doing, bitch? But anyway, I said, oh, I'm sorry, I'm Sharnael. And then she was like, oh, you're Sharnael. Okay. And I was like, oh, well, that must mean something. And then they left. The next day, I was on my way to a management meeting in another state on the highway, and I was driving. And I look over, and they're in the next lane next to me. She's in the passenger seat, and he's driving, and we're in a whole other state. And she
What?
looks at me and she gives me this look like go to hell. And then she looks at him, and he turns over and looks, and they speed up. And I'm like, oh my God, they think I'm following them. Like I'm not even, I'm in Mississippi. I'm not even anywhere near like where we saw each other the other day. And then I never saw him again until like a year later. I was at work, and she came in and she slammed her hand on my desk, and she was like, I just want to let you know you can have him. I'm never going to be you. And I had literally gotten married 2 weeks earlier.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
So,
Something similar happened to me. It was like magnets, just like you. I bought my first townhouse, and like a year later, my partner now, he moved in across the street. He didn't even know I lived there. And I walk outside one day and I see him. I'm like, oh my God, this is awkward. And I found out I was pregnant like the next week with my husband at the time. And so that was that. I always would see him at the grocery store, and it'd be like he'd be on my mind for like a year after it, or I dream of him like all the time randomly. And when my ex-husband and I divorced, I was also a cheerleading coach, and his ex-wife, because he was divorced now too, we both were available all of a sudden. And his ex-wife signed his daughter up for my cheerleading squad.
wow. Yeah. Well, on my
Crazy.
situation, yeah, this is crazy that we're meeting. Mine was a green card situation, which I didn't know it at the time. So we stayed together for 13 years, and I was very religious. I was in full-time ministry at the time. I'm not any of that anymore. But at the time, I couldn't get a divorce in my mind because you don't do that. And
Yeah.
no one in my family had ever gotten a divorce, like all the generations back. And so I just kind of thought, well, this is what I do, this is what you do. You just stay with the person. And we were in separate rooms mostly like that entire time. And he lived pretty much like he wasn't married, which really sucked for me because I actually loved him. And then it just got really abusive, and it was just rough. And I finally got the courage and whatever to kind of like do something different. And I couldn't help compare everything and everybody to him. It was like my mom would even say, like, on a scale from 0 to Brian, like where is this, whenever I would date, it'd be like, because that
Yeah.
was like the
Yeah.
threshold of whatever. But then we ended up getting back together because I got really sick. I was like deathbed sick, like really, really, like they said, you're not going to be here much longer. And the day I was diagnosed, I literally, that's the first person I thought of is before I go, I have to fix this. And then I thought, oh my God, that's really wrong. That's what I'm thinking about. Like that just shows you like how much it showed me how much like that was just a thing. And
Yeah.
so I went to try to like work that out, and he wouldn't talk to me. Like I even was going to get a private investigator because I just couldn't find him. But then I did find something on Facebook that it was like no name, no cover, whatever. Sent him a message, not even knowing if it's him, and like he didn't respond. And I was just like, okay, I don't even know. And there was like a bunch of people with his name in the world that I found that I could see the picture, and it was definitely not him. I finally was working with this guy named Robert Stevens, and he kept saying like, well, if you want to clear this, go find him and like apologize for what happened, and I was like, well, I'm trying, I'm doing all the things. I've like spent 7 days trying to look for him, and and was not having any luck. And then he was like, so I called him back after 7 days, and I said, well, what happens if I can't talk to him? Like, what do I do to clear this? If we can't settle this before I go. And he was like, what do you mean? Like, just everything's energy. Like, just talk to him. Like, as if he was right here. Like, go for a walk and just say whatever. And I was like, wait, what? Because I didn't understand all that at the time. He was like, just literally tell him everything you would say as if he's standing in front of you. Everything is energy, dear. And I was just like, I wish he would have told me that like 7 days ago. Because I'd reach out to his brother and like, sent him these messages. Anyway, so I walked around my block that night, and I just like said all these things that I would have said as if he was there, and was crying and emotional. I mean, I really like acted like it was happening. And then I just laid down in my driveway. It was like 11 o'clock at night, looked up at the stars, and I was just like, okay, God, please just clear this from whatever and help me, whatever. And all of a sudden, my phone was sitting next to me. It rings right next to my head. I look over, and it's like Brian. And I'm like, holy
Wow.
shit. I was just like, what? But when we did get together, like him and I both got married twice in between and divorced at the same time. We were having kids at the same time, like this parallel thing.
Yeah.
Even though we didn't talk to each other, see each other, we were in different cities. Like to the month, we were getting divorced and married at the same time. Yeah, it was just wild that we ended up like connecting again. And when we did, like the love and everything, I just felt like myself again.
So you weren't on your deathbed
Yeah,
anymore?
I ended up healing myself through that and a lot of other things. But I think just not being in the stress of,
Yeah.
being with my ex, because he left, like my second ex actually left like about a month after my diagnosis. And I thought, well, this is the end of the world. But then I realized like he's actually making it worse on a physical than because I was always in stress, like always, always, always stressed out with everything that he was doing. And I was better without him, but I just didn't know it. And then it took like reversing, like remembering how to love myself again and not like pick all these people who hated me. Because what I got out of that is like I had hated myself, not just because of what happened the night that we kind of broke things off at the beginning, but just hated myself in general. And so he is so loving that he couldn't even find me because the hate was in the realm like so thick that,
Mm.
but as soon as that cleared and I started really loving myself and acting like I loved myself and doing all the things to take care of my body and like making just choices for him, my ex to leave and kicked him out and, just all that stuff. I was just like, he could finally like go, oh yeah, I can, because before that, like no chance,
You
uh,
guys were not aligned.
isn't that crazy?
It is. And you mentioned also, I was teaching Sunday school at the time. I grew up Catholic, deeply rooted. So even my first marriage was because I got pregnant. I mean, my dad was like, yeah, you're getting married. He wouldn't even tell his family until I got married that I was pregnant, because this was wedlock. This was,
Wow.
so, got married. But, looking back, I'm sure you feel the same. All the hardship, anything, was for me to be who I am today. Yeah.
Well, for me, when we did get back together, it was like bittersweet because there was this like exuberant, like, whew, relief, and just like, oh, I felt
Yeah.
like home again, and I could breathe, and it just, he loved me for me and not because of anything I did or who I knew, or, it was just this sense of like safety and security and being with him. But then the other part, especially at the beginning, was just this overwhelming sense of like loss, that I just missed out all those years and what a big mistake I made, and just like dread, and just, but it did take me a while to finally get to the point where it was like, okay, you can't take it back. That's what I did. That's the choices I made. I got 3 kids out of it. I wouldn't take that back. And the lessons and just the ability to have compassion for people who may be in that situation, or, whatever different things that I learned on the journey, it was all for something. And yes, it was all my choices, and none of that would happen without my choices, but I couldn't beat myself up anymore for
Yeah.
the dumbass choices that I made. It was just like, okay, move on and just be glad that we're here now and go forward.
Yep, I agree.
You know what's even crazier is I do muscle testing and kinesiology, and I didn't even know what that was at the time, but one of the doctors that I worked with had that and all these other machines that can test like things. And so when I cleared cancer and I knew that it was gone through some other stuff that happened with conscious language, I was like in disbelief that it happened that fast, and because it just literally like came out. So when I went back home, I went to the 4 doctors to just like, because I'm very data oriented, I'm science. I'm like, I need proof, like show me that this happened. And when I went to one of the doctors at the time, I was still wearing the wedding ring from my ex. And because I was legalistic and like, okay, well, if the papers aren't signed, because it had been a long time, but he just was not signing the papers. It's a long story of why he couldn't. But I kept having these dreams about taking the ring off. But my legalistic part was like, well, that would be lying if I took it off because blah, blah, blah. So when I went to the doctor to see if the cancer was gone or if I was clear, they were doing all this muscle testing and all these tests. And when the doctor walked out of the room, I asked the nurse, "Can you do me a favor? Can that thing test like other things if I ask?" And they were like, "What do you want to ask?" And I'm like, "Well, I've been having this dream about taking my ring off. Can I take the ring off? I just want to know if I could take the ring off." And then she was kind of looking at me funny, but then she was like, "Okay, let's test." And it said, "Yes, you could take the ring off." And I was like, okay, can you just, I don't know why it came to me, but it occurred to me all of a sudden, like, wait, am I still married? So I asked, like, can you see if I'm still married? And it came back, yes. And I was like, okay, am I
Oh.
still married to? And I filled in the blank of that person's name. And they said, no. And I was like, huh, okay. And then I said, this comes to me. Was I ever married to this person? And I say the name. No. And in
Wow.
7 freaking years I was with this guy, of just feeling like I was stuck and had to, and
Yeah. And
whatever
other
he did, I was just like, oh God. Then I got scared and I said, please tell me I'm not married to the first guy. And I like said his name, and it said no. And I was like, what? And so I was like, can you test to see if I was ever married to this guy? And gave the name. And so it tests and it comes back no. I like literally, Shanna, I was beside myself. I started crying because I was like, really, I wasted like 20 something years on people that I wasn't even married to, but I stayed because I thought that I was and I had to. And,
yeah.
I kept trying and trying and trying. And then it occurred to me, I'm like, wait a minute. So you said that I was married. So who am I married to? And of course, I can't just say a name. So I said, well, when was I married? And they go through all these months and years, and it comes up November 7th, 1987. And I was like, what is that? Like, I have no clue like what that is. And so I was just like, okay, shelf it and just put it up there. Well, months later, my ex, who we just talked to that one time, and I cleared everything and like we made it all right. And then we didn't talk anymore. And it was just like, okay, I did that. I'm going to move on. He reaches out and he was like, hey, do you want to go get dinner? I could take you to dinner or something. I was like, okay. And so I go up there to meet him. He cooks dinner and he gets out this like football bag because he was a captain of the football team. And he had this like old bag that, and like inside is like every note I ever wrote him, like every poem I ever wrote him, all the songs I'd written on cassette tapes. Like when we would travel or go out of town, we didn't have like long distance because that was costly. So I would like send him a tape, if I was gone a couple weeks in Montana or something, and he would listen and I would just talk or whatever. And he would do that to me. He kept like our Sadie Hawkins matching clothes. Like he had like pictures of everything. And he pulls out this calendar, right? And the calendar is like 87, 88, 89. And it's like his birthday, January 2nd, mine, September 14th, and then November 6th. And I was like, what's November 6th? Like, I don't know what that is. And he was like, you don't remember? I was like, no, I don't. And he was like, that's the night you came to my football game. You put your phone number on my truck and you were like, hey, call me. And then like I called you the next day and like we went out on our first date on the 7th. And I was like, what? Because like the doctor had said November 7th, 1987. And I was like, what? And I was just sitting there, like, oh my God, this is who I'm married to. Right. And so I was just in shock and I didn't tell him like, oh my God, we're married. Like I didn't,
Right.
scare him completely away, like on the first time we're even connecting after 25 years. So I was like trying to restrain myself, and I'm just like, my mind is like, wait, what is marriage? Like, what the heck? Like, what is marriage then? And then just totally, rethinking like everything about my life and my path. And, later I actually blind tested him, and he was also never married to his two that he was married to. And he was also married on November 7th. And like we did not have sex. We did not like nothing. I mean, we had a kiss, but we never had sex when we were together for like the 5 years we were together. We were so pure and like cool, and no judgment if anybody has, but I'm just saying like what are what's the definition? Like what makes marriage marriage? And then the real thing, Shanna, is all my life with guys, I had had the cheaters, the liars, the abusers, which I got the part about it being in the field that I hated myself. So I was collecting haters at the time, cancel clear. What I didn't get is the cheating, because I am so freaking loyal. I'm like super loyal. Like if I am your friend, I'm your friend. If I'm your partner, I'm your partner. But when I got that and realized, oh my God, I was married the whole time I was even with the other two, that means I was the cheater, I was the liar. So I was collecting cheaters and living a lie with these
Wow.
people because I was actually married the whole time. Like they were the adultery, not you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
Wow.
that was huge. Like I was like, oh my God, this is like way big, way big.
That's amazing. That's so interesting. Yeah, I never would think of that. We're not actually legally married. I really don't believe in the contract.
So we actually celebrate our anniversary on November 7th. And so
Oh, perfect.
yeah, I mean we did get married. We had a ceremony, and the guy who helped me reverse all that like ended up marrying us. We got him to marry us, and he's actually passed now. But we wanted our kids there and just for them to have a visual.
Our daughter, not too like this past year, just realized we weren't married.
Oh,
She's like, "You're not married?" And I was like, I was like, "No, we're not." And she's like, "Well, you must be doing something right because you're the only parents I know that are together."
oh.
I thought
Well,
that was so
yeah, my
fun.
parents and his parents were both like, finally, like apparently I didn't know this until later, but like his mom would ask like about me every Christmas or every, they were like, I wonder what Charnel's doing. I wonder, have you ever reached out? Have you ever thought about reaching out? Because he was alone, for a while. And every time that would happen, she would encourage him to reach out. And like his mom and my mom have the same birthdays. And like it's crazy. But I mean, and she actually just passed in January, which was really, really difficult. And I was with her and when she left, and she's got four other boys. And when we were together, right before she was dying, she was like, I've known you no, more than all the other wives, because I've known you since you were 17 and you're like my daughter. But
Wow.
yeah, isn't that crazy? Like what is marriage and what is You guys, I'm sure, are married on an energy level that it's like some other platform of dimension of marriage. So what is actual divorce and what is marriage and what is twin flames, or I don't know, but it's cool and it's healing and it's fun and pretty interesting.
I think that I was trying to live this American dream. I wanted to be a mom. I wanted to have the house, just pretend to be like this perfect family. And I was trying, I mean, I always laugh because, I'm from Louisiana. I'm from New Orleans originally.
Oh,
And
you really? Where are you
mhm,
now?
in Colorado.
Okay, I'm in Louisiana. Did you know that?
No, I didn't. I thought you were in Montana. I don't
I'm
know.
from Montana, but I'm
Okay.
in Louisiana right now.
Oh, where are you at?
I'm in Denham Springs, right outside of Baton Rouge.
Okay, yeah. Wow.
That's so crazy. Oh, this
This
is
is my,
getting scarier
I
as
know,
we
right?
go. How did we not know each other before this?
We
So,
probably did. Yeah.
yeah, you're right. You're right.
So,
Anyway, okay, so
but
didn't mean to
then
interrupt.
you understand. So you understand that Southern roles of women. I remember my mom coming up to me at my son's first birthday and her saying, "Aren't you going to feed your husband?" And this is the first time I've ever had like a party for a whole family and stuff. And I was like, "Oh, I get to feed my husband. Like I've waited my whole life to be in this role. And I was excited about it. And looking back, I'm like, my purpose was to serve and to be a mother and a martyr. And I worshiped that life. Like that's what I thought. And it turned into freaking pain, that stress and anxiety. And oh my God, stop.
I just realized I have never wore this in my life. I've had it in my closet for about a year. And I really went in and I was like, what am I going to wear for this? And I just picked it up and I'm like, oh, I've never wore it. The only Louisiana shirt I own.
Oh, and
Never
I'm so
bought a Louisiana.
jealous.
I've been here for 20 something years.
What?
I've never bought a Louisiana shirt in my life. I just don't wear anything with Louisiana because I'm Montana. My husband's from here and my parents are still here. But also, I had this angst about being here for so long. And now I'm in the whole thank you, God, because I get to be with my parents in Louisiana. Thank you, Louisiana, for letting me be with my parents. They just live up literally walking distance. Thank
Yeah.
you, God, that I met my husband because he's definitely Louisiana. I mean, he is like
Is
straight,
he
like,
from here? Is he from
oh,
there?
he's born, raised.
Brian is?
Yes, he
What's
is.
his last? I mean, I can take this out, but what's his last name?
It doesn't matter. Sehon is
Okay.
which by the way, going back, like I never took on a man's last name and I never did it the first time or the second time. And it was a big like deal to take on Sehon. I still kept my Wolverton, but it was huge for me to take Sehon. But when he pulled out all those like letters that I had written to him, I always signed it Sharnael Sehon, like when I was a little kid. And I thought, like that was a contract. That was some sort of loyalty thing. That was literally like my path. And I didn't, but also even with changing it, because all my books have Sharnael Wolverton, all my CDs, all my everything was branded Sharnael Wolverton. So it was a whole rebrand, just to add
Yeah.
seat on. But it was worth it to me because it was like, that's a part of me now. Like
Yeah.
that was a part of me when I was 17 all the way. I just didn't know it. And now I know it. And it's okay to go ahead and take his name. So
Wow.
still have a lot of stuff that says Wolverton only, but most of everything is changed.
The thing I've learned about, because I also am a genealogist, and so this is my passion, ancestry. If you're from Louisiana, then you're usually related in some way, somewhere.
Wow. What if
They,
y'all are related?
oh, probably are. I mean,
Because
like Louisiana history is something else, but I tell you, it's also been a forgotten history. I feel like people don't understand that Louisiana it was even parts of Colorado, where I'm sitting right now, was once Louisiana. We could be speaking French right now and not English.
and New Orleans is so cool. I mean, it's just like just old and the buildings and like anyone you got to go to New Orleans if you've never been to New Orleans. I mean, it is something to
No
experience.
place like New
French
Orleans.
Quarter is amazing. All the art and the people and the food. Oh my God.
Yeah, right. The snowballs. I'm so jealous. I know you be getting them snowballs. Ah,
Oh my God, my husband should be a chef. Like he loves cooking, and I'm so glad because I cannot stand it. You
yeah.
mentioned I get to cook for my husband. My husband literally, and his best friend is a chef, and he actually picks like all this Cajun food and does like buffets for celebrities and
Wow.
all this like stuff. And he'll call my husband all the time and they're like, well, what about this? What about this? And they change things up and they change recipes up. And when we all get together, they just like cook for days. And I'm just like, the
Well,
food.
guess what? My partner cooks for me Cajun food because
Yeah,
he
that's what
learned
I'm
to.
saying.
I'm like, you must have been Cajun in your past life or something. Thank
What
God.
is he? Is he from New Orleans? Where is
Oh
he?
no, girl. He is deeply rooted Colorado, total
Oh,
Norwegian. Like,
oh, I'm Norwegian. Yeah. My grandparents are from Scandinavia. They're from
yeah.
Norway and Denmark.
Yeah.
So is that
Seriously,
so?
he's Danish and Norwegian, and they're like, he's only like third generation here.
Me too. Me too. My grandparents. Okay, so on both sides, there's Norway and Dane, and then I do have one grandfather who's English, but we actually went to Norway and Denmark.
God, we have so many
This
synchronicities.
is really scary. I don't think I've ever met anyone with so many things that were
I
so,
know. It's so random. I'm definitely going to have to meet you. And
yeah.
when I was looking at your stuff this morning and I saw the science of miracles, remembering the frequency of love, that's so perfect for this conversation right now. But I would love to know what that book is about because I was
Yes.
very curious.
Yeah, I had an encounter that sort of like birthed this book, and the whole concept, I guess, is like finding where there may have been snags, whether it's relational issues or financial issues, or just seeing negative patterns like over and over, and you're just like, oh my God, this again. I thought I was like over this, and using different tools through imagination, through conscious language, through the physical 3D, like you talked about your healing journey, and I had the same exact one, which is like, what? And you actually said something. You said that your body led you into the spiritual journey because you were sick, and that for me too, I was sick, which led me to leaving the Western thing because it just wasn't working for
Mhm.
me, and then going more to the root. But in as far as going to the root issues, ended up meeting a lot of people who are both spiritual and naturopathic. And so I was introduced to all these like frequency machines, like hyperbaric and infrared and red light and PEMF and lasers and ozone and all the stuff that I just freaking love, and essential oils and crystals and everything that's frequency, reverse engineered my situation. But in the same time, meeting these people, they had different spiritual ideas than I was ever really introduced to and or even felt like I was allowed. And so it was having to deprogram and deconstruct like all of this mass programming that I had, because I did go to Bible school in Alexandria, Louisiana, and then I went to seminary in New Orleans. And I left seminary in New Orleans because I kept having these dreams like, it's time to go, it's time to leave. And it was terrifying to me because I knew I wanted to be in ministry. And that seemed like the only path that I could do ministry with. And my undergraduate Bible school, they would not allow a woman to even be in full-time ministry. I could not major in religion. And they were like, oh, maybe you can marry like a nice pastor, or you could be a missionary in China where it's accepted and allowed. But, and I was like, what? So I don't have the right body parts and I could go to China and I'm fine. But, it's like, anyway. So there was just a lot of like hypocrisy and just like things that didn't align or makes any kind of common sense to me. And I finally did leave, but it was such a terrifying thing because I thought that was my only path to ministry. And here there's all these other paths to ministry. We're all serving in a different capacity. And but that was again part of my journey of just learning and unlearning.
You're not going to believe this. Do you know that I wanted to be a pastor?
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, in many ways, my path is still there. It's like there was all these little hints right along our lives. And even if we didn't follow them, we still ended up to where we are right now today. And looking back, it's like everything was, kind of set before us. If we would have, been more present, maybe we would have seen it earlier. And no, I don't want to be a pastor, but yet there's still like this religious study and teaching and sharing without all the dogma.
Right. Yeah, and just loving people and encouraging people to remember their love and their path. Like I feel like my big destiny is to live true and to help people embody their truth and whatever that is, even if it's like total opposite of mine. Like I'm cool and I celebrate everybody where they're at, which, in the past that was not the case. I was pretty judgmental in the religious aspect of it, like, oh, you're listening to that music, oh, you're eating that thing, oh, you're not going to church on Sunday. That used to be my mindset, turn or burn kind of thing. It's like, and I was like, oh, that's so gross and mean and ugly and just,
Yeah.
terrible. But now I'm just like, yeah, just be, you know, enjoy being and do your thing. And I may not even agree with you, but it's like, I'm cool where you're at. Awesome. I
Yeah.
celebrate you. But it took me a while. I was really mad for a long, long time. It took me a while. But when I realized, I was like, well, it served its purpose because I could have been like a drug dealer or on the street,
Yeah,
or
true.
dead or, because
Yeah.
I had eating disorders at the time. And I'm a very black and white person. So probably if I had done cocaine or something, I would have just been like, okay, I'm a cocaine addict now, cancel clear. So, like, or drink, or I just never did anything because I was so afraid to be wrong or to be looked at or judged or that God would be mad at me. That was the biggest. And now it's like, okay, well, if that kept me alive and clean from all that kind of lifestyle, then that maybe, and I met a lot of cool people and, I met a lot of people that I wouldn't have anything to do with this minute, but I celebrate them. And there's a reason that I chose that
Mhm.
and experienced those things. And I have a lot of passion and compassion for people still there. And I'm just like, okay, it's not my path
Oh, yeah.
anymore. Before I used to be like, what? You're not where I am. Like, don't you want to learn this? And I wanted people to like experience what I'm experiencing, the freedom. But not everybody wants to. And so then I kind of had to just be okay. And then sometimes I'll post things and they'll like troll me and say like, "Oh my God, you're going to
Yep.
hell." And it's just like, okay, thanks, love you. It's like before I would
Yeah.
be like, why can't you say blah blah blah? And I would need to
Yeah.
explain and be right. And like then I realized this is just ego. Like who cares? Like let them believe what they want to. It's fine.
Right. Or also like you're just going from one religion and dogma and thinking you're right to the next. And I definitely experienced what they call now, religious trauma syndrome. I was mad. And then I came to the place where I felt the same. And I know that my grandparents' prayers, got me through, dark times. And I always felt like my mama, so you know what a mama is, she had a direct line to source that was powerful. And I used to feel like she was a martyr and she should have loved herself more. And, I went from worshiping that love, that martyr, to, being afraid to ever be like that. And then I had to find a balance somewhere in between. And I'm with you. I mean, everyone has their own journey and are at their own stage of where they're at. And yeah, just I respect that. What happens outside of me really is none of my business.
I love that. What happens outside of me is none of my business. I love that. I'm gonna steal
Yeah.
that. That's cool. Yeah, have fun. Do your
Yeah.
thing.
My dad, when he passed away almost 9 years ago, he had this little kid rock collection. Is like, they had like these little trays and it was like his little kid handwriting. And I was taking a Reiki class at the time. And the Reiki master had said, bring some gemstones. And I was like, I don't have anything like that. And then I was like, wait a second, I wonder if my dad does in his rock collection. And so I pull it out and I started to hold some of them and I noticed that my hands were affected. And I'm realizing, wow, there's an energy that's like affecting my hand. It's my whole hand's reacting. I'm like, this isn't woo-woo. Like this is a real thing that's happening to my
Yo,
hand. This isn't magic.
I'll have to send you my card deck. I have
I
like
know.
a baby.
Crystals, oils, and decrees, right?
Yes. And it tells like on the back, like what they do. And then it has a decree that equals the frequency and then has the companion oils that work best with that crystal. But I feel it in my phone. Like if I hold my phone too long, my hand, it starts shooting pain up. I have these little protector things on there. I'm extra sensitive to crystals and they do record and have memory. So when you get those boxes out, you're like, this is my dad. Like you could probably feel him and the resonance of like him touching all of them. They all have recording of your dad's essence.
Isn't that so cool? I mean, out of all the things that my dad left, that was just priceless to me.
Oh,
He
cool.
picked all those. I mean, he used to go to little kid shows, with his brothers, and
How
they'd go
cute.
all around, they were like the Griswolds, right? We were too a little bit. We'd go you'd take drives all over to different states, and he would collect rocks everywhere.
That's so sweet. And you have
I know.
them.
They became kind of like one of the first out tangible experience of mine that showed me that energy was a real thing and it really wasn't woo-woo. Like this
What's your
was
favorite
science.
crystal?
Um, I mean, I have a Lemurian crystal quartz that I really am attached to.
Me too.
I guess it depends on what I need in my life. When my dad died and I pulled those out, I was so attracted to this rose quartz he has. Actually, it's right here. It's amazing. But it fit in my hand, and I didn't know it at the time what it was doing, but it was calming my soul, my energy, and it was comforting and it was loving. And I didn't even know it. I would carry it everywhere with me. And then, of course, when I went through this period where I couldn't get enough meditation, and I was very, very attracted to hematite.
Oh,
I
yeah.
I didn't realize it at the time either, but I needed to be grounded. You know what I mean? I needed to be anchored to earth.
Yeah, this is rose quartz. It says crystal for unconditional love gives the ability to accept ourselves and others in full love and ease. The soothing energy of the crystal ignites a caring heart and the ability to truly see and feel others' hearts. Rose quartz aids in transmuting the pain of resentment and anger into joy, love, and peace. This is a great support to the circulatory system, kidneys, adrenals, and lung issues. The decree is I am love and I stay. And the companion oils are rose, sandalwood, ylang-ylang, and frankincense.
Love that. This is the rose quartz, I mean, that I was carrying. But look at this amethyst that my dad had. Like,
Ooh, that's a
what?
nice chunk.
It's like almost crystal clear too.
I love that. I have an amethyst on my desk. My mentor, who has now passed, he gave me his amethyst when he passed, and I had actually brought one with him because I knew he was gonna go. And um, oh
Hmm.
gosh, I went and I asked. I said, "Hey, can I give this to you so you could sleep next to it?" Because I was gonna have to leave the next day, and he was like, "No, honey, because I don't know where it's gonna end up. I want you to keep it." And he had one next to his bed already, which I didn't know, and it was from his wife who had passed.
Hmm.
And so I like, oh, okay. And so I started to take it back, and then I said, well, can you just like pray over it or put a blessing on it or something? So he took it for a minute and he just held it. And
Hmm.
because I had said, actually, I said, put your love in it.
Yeah.
And he gave it back to me and he said, I put my big love in it. And he gave it back to me. And then I walked out. I was really sad. I'm just like overwhelmed and walked out to the next room. And a few minutes later, his daughter came out and she said, he wants you to have this one too. And it was the one next to his bed. That was his wife's. That was really, really meant something to him. And so now I had two, and they were both, just that recording. So I get the whole like father connection with that.
Hmm.
11/11 was the day that happened, and then he passed on the 25th. But isn't it crazy how things can just be so meaningful, like a stone, or and I usually keep it on my desk or carry it in my pocket, just like you do with your rose quartz. I keep that amethyst. I carry it around. I have a little pouch. Sometimes I'll wear it when I go travel, if I can't keep it in my pocket. But
You know, because my dad, well, when I did his ancestry, um, I also was studying, gemstones, and I was like, well, what is connected to Czechoslovakia? And it's Moldavite. And
ah,
so I had a client at the time who was from there, and he brought me Moldavite. And I actually wore Moldavite for about 2 years.
that's a strong one.
I
That's
know.
really kick ass.
I can't wear it now. I've tried to put it back on. Like I think I took it off for whatever reason and could not put it back. I still can't. I can't put it back on. I could wear it during the day, but if I have it on very long, I mean, I want to rip it off. I mean, like it's very intense.
It is intense. Isn't it? It's just interesting how they are alive. Like Tesla says they are alive. They really are alive. And they're
Yeah.
here for us.
That's why I feel with that. That's why I say that Lemurian crystal quartz, the lines in it are what really get me. Like I'll just sit there and rub the lines
The
all
record
day.
keepers. They call them
Yeah.
record keep. I had one on my lap and wrote this entire book. I had just bought it. I had an encounter. I'm not going to say a lot of it came from the encounter, but I also attribute it a bit to this Lemurian because I literally just held it and wrote the entire book like with it on my lap. 12
Yeah.
hours later, it was like a book. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. Tell everybody where they can get that book and where they can find you.
Sure. Yeah, I'm at drsharnael.com. It's DRSHARNAEL, like Israel.
Mhm.
And I have biofeedback scans I could do remotely. I do soul audits where we can check like, your biofield, your consciousness, what chakras could be out, or if the female and the male is energies are balanced. We can find your 5 top kind of snags in the programming that would stop you from abundance. But yeah, I have 5 books that are on the website. I have my podcast on Thursdays at noon every week, and it's called True TV. And we like to have fun people like you on and just talk about things like we're talking about today. But yeah, I have all kinds of workshops as well. I have EMFs and grounding devices and my
Your
crystal
cards. Yeah.
deck. Yeah. And I'll have to send you like my book and my card deck. If you send me your address, I'll get it
Oh,
out to you. But I'd love to see you guys. Like I say this every time, but I did conference speaking for 17 years or 20 years.
okay.
And I love being in front of people in real life and hugging them and hearing this story and that eye contact. And I love platforms like this because I don't have to be on a plane and I could just do like 7 interviews today and, touch a lot of people and talk to a bunch of people. But I do miss like the eye contact. So if any of you guys are watching and you're like, oh, I saw this, give me a little hi. And then I can just go, oh, you're who I was talking to. And send you good vibes and connect with you. Or if you want to work with me, I'm open for that. But I appreciate you letting me have this time with you. And I feel like I literally met an old friend or like a sister or
I know. I
from
could talk
another
to you
mother.
forever.
I mean, we might be related through our
Yeah. Do
me and
that.
me and your husband are related, or maybe my
I
husband
know.
and yours are related. I mean, this could go really, really deep. Lots of things. But yeah. Anyway, I enjoyed this so much, and I hope that we see you somewhere around.
Thank you so much. It's been a
Yes.
pleasure.
Thank you so
All
much.
right.
God bless
Have a
you.
good one.
All
Bye.
right.
Sense of Soul.
Thanks for listening to Sense of Soul podcast, and thanks to our special guest. If you want more of Sense of Soul, check out my website at senseofsoulpodcast.com.
It's time to wake